The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Hello and welcome to Fantasy NBA Today. My name is Adrian Benjamins and I'm joined by Coach. And this episode is brought to you by Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. Taste the Kona difference, get some delicious coffee, and head over to hawaiianisles.com or Amazon. Coach, how are you doing on this beautiful evening?
Yo, Adrian, how are you, my man? I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, man. We got so much to talk about. Playoffs are looking great. The draft lottery was Tuesday a few days ago. Today, we're going to get into the Atlanta Hawks. So we've got so much to talk about, man. I am excited to be here tonight with you. How are you doing?
Fantastic, man. It's great to be here with you. It's lots happened this week. And, like we talked about last week, there's no off season, man. There's stuff cooking with the NBA all the time. So good time to dig in, no doubt about it.
So I guess we should probably start with the playoffs. And literally just a few minutes ago, Game 2, Warriors-Blazers just ended. Coach, I know you caught this game. Shocker, man. I really thought Portland was going to pull this one out. It was close all throughout, but Portland had a little nice lead there towards the end of the game. And this one, man, kind of stings for the Blazers. This is one that they probably needed if they were going to have a shot to win this series. It's like to win this game would have been huge going back to Portland. What do you think this game? What do you think of the series?
There's no question. I'm sure that just crushed them because they had a 17-point lead with the ball looking like, they were going to step up and get it done. But, they fell. The Splash Brothers definitely gave it to them in the third quarter, and that was that. So, Portland's definitely in a bit of trouble, to say the least.
No, man, no lead is safe against that Golden State Warriors team. They can put points up on the board in a hurry. So, man, if you have like a 10-point lead, that could be gone in like a minute. So, man, you can never let up against this Warriors team. You have to constantly be at a 100% effort. And man, this one has got to be really tough. But Portland's been really good at home. I think if they can go back to Portland, try to be optimistic here. They looked really good tonight. They were in position to win this game. So they need to go home, get that crowd behind them, just get that victory at home and go from there. So
that's their only chance. But it's just it's just been a joy to watch Curry since Durant went down. Man, he has just turned it immediately right back on, and what a Hall of Fame champion he is. It's just It's so much fun to watch. And did you hear that stat tonight? I thought it was one of my favorite stat of the year, and I'm a stat guy. So he has not missed a foul shot in the fourth quarter of any NBA playoff game since 2015. He's made 79 in a row. Can you believe that?
That's unbelievable. I mean, arguably maybe the greatest shooter in NBA history. I say already. I mean, he's not even done yet, and I would say already he's probably the best shooter in NBA history. Another guy who's really turned it up, Klay Thompson, has been outstanding in the playoffs. I didn't really see this entire game, and I don't know the box score yet, so I don't quite know exactly what his end line was tonight. But just all throughout the playoffs, especially ever since Durant has gone down, Klay Thompson has been spectacular. And man, I hate to say this, Coach, but it looks like the Warriors are having a lot of fun playing with Kevin Durant. Do you think there's something behind that, or do you think they just are really excited to get Kevin Durant back as soon as possible.
To be honest with you, I think that when he went down and everybody said, "Oh, Golden State's in huge trouble now. They're not going to win it." Everybody was doubting him. That's exactly what they needed, because people forget that Draymond, Curry, and Thompson set the record for most wins in a regular season. They broke the Bulls' old record, and they won a championship. So, I think just the fact that people, that little bit of doubt everybody was raining down on them, just made them step up and made them even better. So, with Durant, without Durant, I don't know if anybody's going to stop them. They're just amazing.
Yeah, I agree. Coach, let's take a look at the Eastern side of the playoffs. Game 1 last night, Bucks, Raptors, Bucks squeaking out the victory. I've been all over the place today on ESPN, a lot of sports radio and stuff. A lot of people harping on the Raptors. A lot of people feel like this series might already be over. And Coach, I know you and I, we love the Bucks. We both kind of picked the Bucks to win this series. But I have to say, man, the Raptors were winning that game. They were up double digits multiple times throughout that game. They just couldn't finish at the end. They just really dropped off at the end of the game. The Bucks, specifically Brook Lopez, really came on strong there in the fourth quarter and got the victory. But I think if you're the Raptors, I would feel a little optimistic that you really had a chance to win that game, and I would kind of build on there. So I'm not in that camp that thinks that this series is over. I do think the Bucks are going to win. I think it's going to be a long series, though. What did you think of that game? I know you're picking the Bucks, but do you still think it's going to be a pretty quick series, low games? What do you think about it, Coach?
Well, I think Toronto's good. Obviously, they wouldn't have got to this point if they weren't. But I wouldn't sell them short. Their defense is outstanding, and Lowry, who usually doesn't play very well in the playoffs, is playing good ball. And Siakam's a star now, so I expect them to push Milwaukee. I think I still like the Bucks, but I think that the Raptors are definitely a strong team. I think they're going to play them tough, and we haven't talked since last week's show on that brutal loss from the Sixers that I had picked to the upset, and that was an amazing shot and an amazing game. That was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it.
You know what? I forgot that we haven't talked since then. To see that ball bounce around that rim, I think it was 4 times. That was unbelievable. Coach, I never seen anything like that in a game 7 with the game on the line like that. That was unbelievable. I gotta say, Embiid crying at the end of that game, him really showing how much it means to him to win. Some people are like, oh, you shouldn't cry, but I just love the emotion. I love that he's so serious about it. It really shows how much he wants to win. I think really interesting to see what happens with the Sixers in the offseason. I think Jimmy Butler really, he kind of got into that team, kind of bonded with Embiid there. So I hope Jimmy stays. Curious if, I guess, I don't know if they're going to be able to keep Tobias Harris. I hope so. But even if not, future's bright in the Sixers. The experience for them to get it this far in the playoffs, they're going to be a contender in the future, no doubt. Coach, back to this series. One other surprising thing that shocked me, Marc Gasol did not play well. To see Brook Lopez outplay Marc Gasol, very surprising. Marc Gasol could not buy a bucket during that game. And when they brought Gasol there, also I believe he's a former defensive player of the year. So really surprised to see him get outplayed. I'm thinking he's gonna bounce back here. It's going to be a really interesting series. This one is going to be a lot of fun. Of course, Kawhi and Giannis, two of the best players in the NBA on both sides of the ball. What do you think about it, Coach?
Yeah, as far as Gasol goes, there's no question. This last year and a half, he's regressed a bit. He has had a lot of injuries through the years, so I think they're just going to get some good results from him in sections, similar to Lopez. I have no idea how Lopez threw that game up on the board. That was nuts. But I would expect Gasol and Lopez to be secondary guys in this whole thing. It's going to come down to the main guys on both sides. And I think that'll fight it out. But I like what Milwaukee's done, and the reason I think they do have a chance, to possibly beat the Warriors if Durant doesn't come back is I love the veterans that they've put on that team. Hill and Ilyasova and the guys, that are the grit and grind guys from the league for years. They're not, it's not above them whatsoever. They feel very comfortable coming in there and giving great 20 minutes of play, and that makes a big difference in the playoffs. So I like Milwaukee's bench. I think Coach Bud's doing a terrific job there, and I think it should be a really fun series, and I think it'll be an entertaining finals as well.
Yeah, man, I cannot wait. This playoffs, these series that we've got, the potential finals. I mean, this has been amazing. I'm loving every minute of it. It's been great. Coach, let's move over to the draft lottery, which was held on Tuesday. I'm very excited. I'm most excited to talk draft lottery with you, Coach. I feel like we could do an entire show just on the draft lottery. Coach, I can't remember a draft lottery being that exciting. 3 teams moving up into the top 4. We know it's at stake. Zion Williamson, a generational type talent. So, man, when they went to commercial break, knowing that it could be the Lakers, the Knicks, the Grizzlies, and the Pelicans, man, I was on the edge of my seat. What did you think of the draft lottery, man? That was insane.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was fantastic on several levels. I mean, I have watched every draft lottery that's ever been on, I swear to God. And I remember very vividly watching when the Knicks got the first pick to take Patrick Ewing, and
wow.
And I remember very clearly when Cleveland got the first pick to take LeBron, and I think Zion is in that category, with these guys as a can't miss NBA player. So yeah, I thought it was really fun, great for the league, and I love the new rule where the anti-tanking piece comes in, where they're spreading out those percentages so the bottom teams aren't just going for the worst record. I think it's great for the league. It keeps interest from everybody, and it was a blast. But I'll tell you what, and for the hoop ballers out there too, and I don't know if you've seen it, Adrian, but Game of Zones, the Bleacher Report has that Game of Zones that they do. They just put one out yesterday about the draft, and it is absolutely hysterical. So it is worth a view for whoever has a chance to take a look at it. I'm telling you, man, if you're a Game of Thrones fan and an NBA fan, you just you can't even keep a straight face. They have I'll just say one thing for those guys that watch it: check out the Trae Young part. It is so damn funny. But I wanted just to go for it, because like you said, I could talk draft lottery all day, but this the funniest part about it is, and the Game of Zones ends with, it's right when the assistant commissioner says the New Orleans Pelicans have the number 1 pick, and then it shows a close-up of the cartoon style of Anthony Davis, and he just looks like, oh, and then they start playing the Curb Your Enthusiasm music, like, because it's like, that was like the worst thing that could have happened, because talk about confusing. So what are the Pelicans going to do? What is Anthony Davis going to do? That's the scenario of that happening was only 6% to begin with. And then trying to unravel what all of this means, it was like, okay, we really don't know a darn thing. I mean, anything still could happen. It's like wide open.
Man, so I was a little, okay, I have to admit, I was a little disappointed when the Pelicans got the number 1 pick. And it just hasn't been an exciting franchise. They've lost Chris Paul. Anthony Davis wants to leave. You had an opportunity for this guy Zion, who could be the next LeBron, to end up in a city like New York, who's been bad for so long, in the Mecca, the Big Apple. I was a little disappointed. And I'm not a New York Knicks fan, but anyways, now that I've had some days to think about it, I think it's going to be fine. I think it's going to be great. I mean, look at what Giannis is doing for Milwaukee. Look at what Russell Westbrook is doing for Oklahoma City. So I think Zion's going to put New Orleans on the map. This is going to be outstanding. And man, what a great draft lottery. It was exciting. I mean, usually I'm kind of bored, but to see 3 teams jump up like that was just a lot of fun. I can't wait to see what happens. You mentioned Anthony Davis. We've heard David Griffin say that his number 1 priority is to do everything he can to keep Anthony Davis. Coach, we're hearing from Anthony Davis's camp that it doesn't matter. He wants out. But let me drop a scenario by you. Let me get your thoughts on this. Let's say technically they can hang on to Anthony Davis for the next season. They can keep him till the next trade deadline. What if they want to see how things go with him and Zion on the court? What if they are spectacular together? And what if Anthony Davis loves it and he decides to stay? Coach, let me remind you, Kobe Bryant at one time wanted out of the Los Angeles Lakers. They decided to hang on to him. They added Pau Gasol. Kobe changed his mind and decided not to leave the Lakers. Do you think that could be a possibility, that maybe Anthony Davis might decide to stay with the Pelicans now that Zion is there? What do you think, Coach?
Well, Adrian, I'll tell you what. I personally believe that there's a very, very small chance that happens. I just don't think that this is going to roll out well for New Orleans. There's too much. I think there's too much bad blood. The fans were booing him at the end of the year. He wanted out. He doesn't like the city. He doesn't want to play there. They have Zion, they have Julius Randle, so they've got a bunch of big guys there, and it doesn't look like it's going to work to me. And Dale Demps was a terrible general manager. They do have David Griffin, who's going to be a big upgrade, but he's saying all of that wishful thinking wise. There's not been one word from the Davis camp saying that he wants to stay at all. So I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't know what ramifications that are going to come from that. But I think, like I say, I don't feel like anything was really solved other than, and I think if you looked at Zion, he was like, oh my God, I thought he was going to throw up. I think that's the last thing he wanted to do was go to that dumpster fire. And I'm not a big Alvin Gentry fan either, the coach. So I don't know, man. Like you say, I was disappointed too. I think everybody was disappointed because it's just like the worst case scenario. But I still think Davis moves. I think he ends up in LA or New York or somewhere. And, I think they'll probably move Julius Randle too and just do a reset with Zion and try to build young again and go from there. I think that's is going to be the only option for Griffin. But, hey, I was also felt the same way with Paul George in Oklahoma City. I never thought there was a chance in hell that he was going to stay. So you never know, man. That's again part of the fun of this whole, the whole NBA scene right now is it just, you just don't know what's going to happen next. But I'll tell you, to put all that in a nutshell, watch Game of Zones on Bleacher Report. And
I can't wait to check that out. I'm definitely going to check that out, Coach. I agree with you. And, I agree with you. I think it's pretty much inevitable that Anthony Davis will be gone. And, the future's still very bright for the Pelicans with Zion. And they are going to get a very nice haul for Anthony Davis, whether it's with the Knicks or the Celtics or the Lakers or the Clippers or other teams that we maybe aren't even thinking about. I mean, they are going to get multiple solid young players in return, likely some high draft picks as well. So the future, very bright for the Pelicans. And man, I mean, it was funny because all the buzz going into that draft lottery is what team is going to land Zion so they could potentially trade for Anthony Davis. And the team with Anthony Davis lands Zion. I mean, just unreal, man. I mean, just so unreal. All right, Coach, I could talk draft lottery with you all night long. I mean, we need to dive deeper into the draft lottery for sure. The combine's going on right now. The real draft is in, I think, 4 or 5 weeks from now. So we're going to have a lot to talk about on future shows. But, Coach, let's jump over to the Atlanta Hawks right now. Let's talk about this team, the season that they had. You know, we know that they're in rebuild mode. And I got to admit, Coach, I'm pretty excited with the way that the build is going so far. They have some nice young pieces in John Collins. I really like Kevin Huerter a lot. And Trae Young. Coach, I was very worried and scared about Trae Young. I was in the camp going into the year that is a chance he could be a bust. I know that, he showed shades of Steph Curry in college, and people really loved him, but I thought he had the biggest bust potential, but I was wrong. He looked really good. Still has some issues, right? Still has to work on his defense and, get the turnovers down, but still so young. I mean, it was his first year. He was spectacular. Future so bright in Atlanta. Coach, what did you think of their season? What do you think of their young pieces?
Well, for the hoop ballers out there that are Hawks fans, I think you got to be very excited. I mean, they were in such shambles at this time last year. Nobody knew what was going to happen with that team. But I remember telling my son toward the end of the year, I found myself watching Hawks games, on my ticket and watching chunks of time because they were so fun to watch. So I think, I think they've got a great upside. I really like their young coach. The team played hard for him down the stretch. And, they're so young. They're the youngest team in the NBA. And, to build around Collins and Young, and they've got the 8th and 10th pick this year, so they'll add some good, strong depth. Herter's going to be a better than average shooter in this league for sure. And they'll shed a few of those big contracts. They're trying to move Bazemore and maybe Prince or one of the guys that are making a few extra bucks, but they've got tons of cap money. They'll be able to sign both those lottery picks this year and build from there. So I agree with you. I think they have a very good future, and within a couple of years they're going to be back in the playoff run. I would think.
Speaking of lottery picks, I've listening. I think I was listening to ESPN last night, and they were talking about some of the losers in this draft lottery, and they listed the Hawks because the Hawks did fall 3 spots. I believe they were supposed to be the 5th pick. They've got the 8th pick, but they also have the Dallas Mavericks pick, which ends up being the 10th pick. And I gotta tell you, Coach, right there in that draft, right in that range, that 8 to 10, you could take a shot on some guys like a Cam Reddish. Jackson Hayes is a guy I like from Texas, the center. I think he's the best center in this draft. A guy from France, Sekou. I can't even pronounce his last name. I'm not even going to try. Brandon Clark. I mean, they could take a shot on some guys here. Also a guy that I like, Nasir Little. If a couple of these guys hit, man, I mean, this could be spectacular to add 2 more solid guys to this young core that we already talked about. I mean, Coach, this could be very exciting. I mean, I'm salivating about what could be here, man. What do you think about it?
Well, I'll tell you that there's no question, even though they have 2 lottery picks, they definitely were losers in this deal. I mean, do you realize they could have walked away with the 1st pick and the 5th pick? If everything would have gone as good as it could, because the Mavs were protected in the top 4. But So, 8th and 10th is a far cry from 1st and 5th. But like you said, there's so really after the first, in my opinion, the first three guys are cut and dry. You've got Zion, Ja Morant, and RJ Barrett. And I think those three are can't miss really, really good players in the league. But after that, it is wide open. You hear all kinds of talk about different guys. So, they'll have the camp beforehand, and they'll do all the stuff. So everybody will move around, and some of the guys you mentioned, Nazir is really strong player. I like the Culver kid from Texas Tech. I love the point guard from Purdue that tore it up in the NCAA. So there's a ton of guys that are going to go 6, 8, 10, 12 that could definitely help them in the long run. And again, they're even going to get younger if that's possible. So they can put 5 guys on the floor that are 21 and under, which it sounds like an AAU team, not an NBA team. But hopefully, we'll be able to examine it as time goes on and start talking and sort of dissecting the draft and looking to see what happens there. But, as far as the Hawks are concerned, I think the fact that Trae Young shows that he has the potential possibly to be an all-star at some point, I think that is a big plus. And there are other young guys. I mean, they've got a great chance to be, competitive soon. And even if they get guys that are a year or two project in this year's draft, I think, if you're a Hawks fan, you got to be looking for 2 or 3 years from now to when you're going to contend anyway. So, that's part of the NBA. They had all their all-stars. If you remember, I think it was 4 years ago, they had 4 Hawks in the all-star game, the Millsap and Horford days with all those guys. And so, that's how fast it goes. 4 years later, boom, you're on total rebuild, and you got to, get the guys in. But there are teams that get in that scenario and don't go anywhere. I mean, we've seen, the Knicks make, terrible picks like Ntilikina and all these guys, and they never move forward. But the Hawks have a plan. They have a good coach, good GM, and I think they're going to be a competitive team. So, as far as how that affects fantasy in a whole is, I think those guys start to become relative now because they're going to get decent minutes. They're probably going to have delusions of grandeur of trying to make the last playoff spot, so they're going to get more usage. And you got to start looking at those guys sneaking up in some of the draft spots whereas last year I don't think a Hawk went till like the 5th round in most leagues. So it'll be interesting, but I think it's definitely when we got the Hawks to talk about tonight, that was the first thing that came to my mind is that to have the very first team we're talking about and be one of the worst records. I think they've got the most upside of that bottom 5 or 6 teams.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I actually, I agree with you. I like their fantasy outlook, man. I mean, another year of these young guys together. I like what I saw from them. I like how they gelled on the court, their style of basketball. They actually, towards the end of the season, they started winning some games. And, man, Trae Young, I love Kevin Huerter, John Collins. We're not going to draft any of these guys early, or at least I'm not planning on it.
Yeah, let me ask you this, Adrian. I'll put you under the gun. How high would you take John Collins? Because I think he's their best fantasy guy.
So for me, I'm not looking at John Collins at the earliest, like maybe towards the end of round 4, round 5. Now, I was so excited about John Collins. He was on my must draft list coming into the year, and didn't really disappoint me. Was outstanding, a good rebounder, good scorer. Here's what's missing from his game, though, Coach: the defense. He needs to either bring some blocks or add a 3-point shot to his, a consistent 3-point shot. That's when he's really going to make the leap where we draft him earlier. But until then, Coach, you might be surprised. I'm looking at the player rater right now. I want to make sure I got this right. This is for 9 category leagues. He actually finished as an 8th round value player 94. Now, this is a little deceiving because he did miss a chunk of the beginning of the season due to injury. So this is an overall ranking for the whole season. So this is a little deceiving that he's right here. I think on a per game basis, he's much higher than this. But I do love John Collins, man. I love how bouncy he is. Just when he's on the court, he stands out so much. I think he's going to be an elite player one day. But for right now, I'm probably at the earliest towards the end of the 4th round. What do you think, Coach?
Well, I may have him ranked a little higher than everybody else. I know he flops in there in the 7th or 8th round based on the ratings, but I'm telling you, if he's healthy, and that was the thing that hurt him this year, is he missed quite a bit of time injured. But I'm telling you, man, that dude can throw up 20 and 15 like nobody's business without even trying. Now, I agree with you from an NBA perspective. The biggest concern of the Hawks is what you just mentioned. Defensively, they're bad, really, really bad. They were the worst in the league. And the reason they're so bad is because Collins and Young are 2 of the worst defenders in their positions. So, how does that affect fantasy? He still can block a few shots here and there. So I wouldn't let that affect where you rank him. I mean, the guy's going to score. He's going to get a ton of rebounds. I think he's a top 10 rebound guy in the league. He's not terrible as far as turning the ball over. He can block a few shots. His percentages are decent. So, for me, I hope I can steal him late 4th round, early 5th round at the latest. But I definitely would take him higher than where he ranks out in most of these in 7th, 8th round. So I'd say he's the number 1 guy. Now, as far as Young goes, my concern there is, I know he's a phenomenal shooter, but when you're that much of a volume shooter, I still have some concern with percentages. And certainly his turnovers are rough. But I'll tell you what, his vision of the floor is underrated. That guy is a fantastic vision of the court and passing the basketball. He's not just a Curry shooter guy. He can do the whole deal. So, another guy, if he fits your build, is somebody, to really keep an eye on in the draft. I mean, all the rest of the guys, Herders and all those, I think, the jury's out. We still have to wait on most of those young guys that are coming up. But I'm telling you, I would not be afraid to take Collins late 4th, and I'd start looking at Trae Young maybe in the 7th or 8th, personally. What do you think about Young?
So I got to be honest with you. I'll probably stay away from Trae Young. I'm worried about the turnovers. I'm worried about the field goal percentage as well. I do agree with you, man. He is an elite passer already. I mean, maybe a top 10 passer in this league already after 1 season. So I always love that about his game. And he can hit that shot, man. His range is unbelievable. So, Coach, I always say the point guard position, the hardest to learn in the NBA. I always, young point guards coming into this league, I always give them a long leash because sometimes it just takes a few years for these guys to figure it out. We've seen it before. Guys like Jeff Teague, they don't light the league on fire right away. That's very rare to see. I mean, Lillard did, Kyrie Irving did, but those are like special cases where that happens. And I'm telling you, man, Trae Young, he really exceeded my expectations. I mean, Coach, he was doing things like the between the legs, really jazzy, fancy passes. He was doing things that I didn't think he would be so comfortable doing so quickly. So, man, again, exceeded my expectations. The future's so bright for him. I think he's a future all-star. And, Coach, I was not saying this at the start of the season last year. I was on the other side of the fence when it came to Trae Young. Now, for fantasy, I'll likely stay away from him. Coach, I love going point guard early in my drafts. I love locking up elite point guards. So, I likely will be done drafting my point guards by the time he goes off the board. So I'm not saying not to draft him. But I don't know, Coach. What round would you say to go for him? Like sixth round, or is that too late?
No, I don't think it's too late at all. Personally, I think seventh or eighth round. Really, I mean, I think a lot of people are going to have the exact same feeling that you have, and I can tell you, going into last year's draft, he was on my do not draft list. I figured he'd be a volume shooter with low percentages, with a ton of turnovers, and watching him the last basically third of the season. He's starting to get it quickly. I mean, I'm telling you, if he's there and it fits my build and I need a second point guard, I would take him in the eighth round, seventh, eighth, ninth round for sure if he's still available. And I don't think, with the depth of everything, I think you may be able to get him seventh, eighth round. And I think the upside, there's a little risk there, but the upside is high because he could be top 10 in threes in the league. He could be top 10 assists. And if he cuts down the turnovers, he's going to win some people some leagues.
Mm-hmm. And I think he will cut down the turnovers, and I think he will figure out how to shoot more efficiently. So, Coach, I do believe there is a day where we will be drafting him towards the top of the board. But I'm going to give him another few seasons before, or I'm going to wait till we see that out of him. Coach, again, I want to go back to your take real quick on John Collins. I pulled up the per game ranking, and he is sitting in a fourth round value on a per game basis. So I think you were right on with your analysis on John Collins. And then, Coach, the last guy, without knowing who they're going to draft, I'd love to go back to this when the draft is done and see who they ended up getting in that 8th and 10th spot. But another guy that I will have no problem targeting at the end of my draft is, I love what I saw from Kevin Huerter, mostly because the kid can stroke it, man. He's got a nice outside shot. Coming into the draft, he got compared to like a poor man's Klay Thompson type of a player. And I can kind of understand why, man. He's got good size, pretty decent athleticism, and man, he really has a nice form on his jump shot. And Coach, I'm always, for whatever reason, lacking threes, and so I'm not going to take Huerter early because there's still a little bit of cloudiness there. Which, as you mentioned, they still got Turian Prince, Kent Bazemore. I agree with you. I think those guys are on the way out, but I don't think we need to draft Kevin Huerter early. I think this is a guy you could look at towards the end of your draft. And man, I mean, he could be a guy. It wouldn't surprise me if he finishes with mid-round value, like 6th or 7th round value. This is probably a guy you can get in like the 10th, 11th round. Do you like Kevin Huerter, Coach?
I do. I think he's going to be a fine player. I really do. I mean, watching him at Maryland in college, I thought, man, this guy, because he's got a lot of height and he's a definite 3-point shooter that has a gorgeous balance and stroke. He does remind me a little bit of a Klay Thompson, Eric Gordon kind of guy, where when he gets hot, he's gonna throw up some good shots. And the coach loves him. He got a lot of minutes. He was started a lot of games. So, I would be afraid to take him above 10th or 11th round this year. But I think, he's the perfect guy to have in a keeper league, because eventually I think it'll click and he'll step it up another level. But, he's such a young guy. He was a one and done guy. So, I think he's 20 years old. So he may need another season or two, but I can see taking him late if you need some threes. His percentages are fantastic from the foul line, and he does some good things, but I'd say a year or two away.
Yeah. I'm looking at a depth chart right now. Trae Young at point guard. They got Kevin Huerter as the starting shooting guard. Turian Prince, small forward. John Collins, power forward. Dwayne Dedman at the center spot. And I'm telling you, man, if coming into training camp and preseason summer league, if Kevin Huerter is slotted in as the starting shooting guard, he might move up my board just a little bit. I don't think we need to jump, go crazy and target him early. He definitely will be a late round target, but I will be very excited if he is slated to start over guys like DeAndre Bembry and Kent Bazemore and Taurean Prince. And man, some interesting stuff for the Hawks, Coach. I think we both agree future is bright there. A lot of stuff to be excited about for reality and for fantasy. So Hawks fans. And you know what, Coach? I heard a lot of Hawks fans, because they gave up that pick that was Luka Doncic. A lot of Hawks fans were like, they were sad, they were upset, but I think now seeing how Trae Young looked there and seeing how this team is starting to shape up, I think now they must be really happy, man. Future's so bright for the Hawks. Oh,
it really is. And I saw your draft board for next year, and I know you're planning on taking the 42-year-old Vince Carter in about the third round. So you're going to be set on Hawks, man, with Vince Carter as your player coach.
Coach, I am 40 years old, and I have to say it is great that there are still a couple guys in the league. Actually, there are not many because Dirk retired. So Vince might be the last guy that's over 40 years old, but it still makes me feel like I'm not over the hill yet, that there's a guy in the NBA that's older than me, Coach. So,
dude,
man,
I'm telling you, that is a great thing. I remember very, very well when I got to in my early 40s, and there were still a few guys hanging around. I thought, hey, I'm okay, man. They can, they're doing it. Now it's like, oh my God, I'm the same age as the TNT guys trying to waddle to the board to race each other. I'm Kenny and Shaq, and those guys are my age. So, gosh, things turn quick, man. So enjoy that time when you can, man, because you're going to catch me before you know it.
Oh, time goes by so fast. I still get excited too when I see Vince Carter dunk, because I'm like, man, it's unbelievable at his age that he can still get up. Coach, I think Vince Carter may be the best dunker of all time. I know a lot of people, Jordan, Dominique Wilkins, you can put up there too.
I'll take Dr. J. I still
Dr. J.
I'm still a Dr. J guy, but I'm with you, man. The fact that he doesn't just dunk, he puts it down. I mean, he gets those leaners hanging. I mean, at 42, that's just mind-boggling to me.
Oh, unbelievable stuff. All right, Coach, we touched on the playoffs, draft lottery. I cannot wait to talk more draft with you. It's so much stuff to talk about. And then we just did the Hawks, man. Any closing thoughts before we wrap this show up?
Well, I'm excited because I printed out, they sent me my NBA Summer League tickets. So I'm all fired up for that. I printed them off today. My son and I will be at day 4, day 5, and day 7. So we're going to be gearing up. And they keep announcing more and more guys that are going to be playing in that. Some guys that have even played a year or two. I just read that Michael Porter Jr. from Denver is going to play in all the games. And Zion and Barrett, all those guys are going to be there. It's like I said, the NBA does such a great job of marketing themselves and staying in the middle of everything that's going on. So I think the playoffs that are left are going to be a blast. They're going to be competitive and fun to see what happens. We've, like you said, in a month or so, we've got the actual draft. Then we'll have the just insanity of the free agents. There's still a ton of guys that are going to be moving all over the place. And, and then the summer league hits, and before you know it, we're there. So it's certainly good times to dig in and not put it on the back burner and keep an eye on all this, because you see those little things, they'll make a big difference when it comes time to draft time next year.
Man, the NBA so great. Never it just feels like it never slows down. You mentioned free agency, man. This year or this summer could be one of the wildest free agencies we've ever seen. So many high profile guys like Jimmy Butler, Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant. I mean, there are so many guys that could be moved. It is
Kyrie, yeah.
yep,
Tons of
that that mixed in with these incoming rookies, I mean, it's so much, man. It's awesome. All right, Coach. Before we get out of here, where can the listeners hit you up at?
Absolutely. We're starting to get some action on the forums again on Hoopball. So go to our website Hoopball and hit the forums because we're getting a lot of good Dynasty League questions and strategy questions going in. You can also hit me up on Twitter. It's at Joe Sarvadi. That's JoeSarvadi. And look forward to chatting with you on there. And that's it, man.
All right. Hit me up too. I'm at Adrian Benjamins. We'd love to hear from you guys. We'll start answering questions towards the end of the shows, I think, going into the summer. Thanks so much, guys, for listening, and we'll see you guys next week.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.